Level Gus Johnson, along with my main man that's going to be with us for the next 2 weeks, Dean Blandino. Dean, what are your thoughts on what you've seen so far?
What are your thoughts on what you've seen so far?
Hey, come on. You got this. Gus Johnson dissed you so bad. I can't believe it. Before our first show, you give great fodder material for us. How's it feel to be dissed by Gus Johnson?
On national TV.
Yeah.
One of my first games, and here's Gus Johnson, who's a legend. Now, where I come from, when you put your hand out like that, I'm gonna high five you. I'm a high fiver, and he pulled it away. And after that, I was done. I don't even know what I said.
Well, when you're from
I don't even know what I said.
From this coast, when you want to diss a guy, you do that and then pull it back.
Away.
You know, that's pretty embarrassing.
Yeah.
Yes, man.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, that happened to me while I was at the game at USC. But while that was going on, you're doing a game, Oregon State, Minnesota, and how many replays did it take for you to get one right? You were 0 for 2. Let's take a look at this. Let's take a look at this tape.
Do we need to bring in Mike Pereira to get him on the board in the positive column tonight?
You know what? Let's bring him in. Mike,
give him a cheapie.
This is a layup. This is an alley-oop.
Hey, I think it's a catch. I mean, he had control all the way to the ground. The ball never came close to touching the ground. I might as well do the trifecta on this one. Clearly an incomplete pass. Hey, I appreciate you bringing me in for the gimme. I don't know what to say. See, 1 for 3. I wasn't 1 for 3. They were wrong both of the times.
In these roles, our job is to analyze these replays and get them right more often than not. We're going to miss some, but we got to be 95, 96%. 1 for 3. 33%, come on.
Hey people, welcome to Dean Blandino. He joins us here at Fox. He is the new Kristen Balboni, as a matter of fact, you know, who was with us last year. I think it's a step down, but that's all right. But welcome to Fox.
Thank you.
In the role, it's part of Fox's commitment to rules knowledge and basically to have some rules person there every play, every game. So all the college games, all the NFL games, it'll be Dean or myself, but that's how important they think rules are. And so, Dean, it's great to have you. And what we're going to do is we're going to go through on a weekly basis, we're going to go through a bunch of plays. And they're going to be the controversial plays. There's going to be teaching plays. There might even be some funny things, but we're going to go through a whole bunch of things. Not funny, as we start out, is funny. Seattle. I mean, and this is a play number 1. We're talking about the lane ejection, you know, on the interception that was returned for a touchdown that wasn't a touchdown. And Lane here got called for throwing a punch and was ejected from the game. There was also on that call, on that play, there was an illegal block in the back called for what I would call a nudge, for gosh sakes. It's barely a touch on Aaron Rodgers, who was trailing the play anyways. So in the end, after this whole play, they ended up ejecting Lane for what they said was throwing a punch. And then they ended up declining that penalty and taking the illegal block in the back that I don't think was an illegal block in the back because they looked at the Lane play as a dead ball foul. It was a cluster. It was
definitely, yeah, it was one of those plays, and it felt like one of those games. And we both, you know, we've held the same position at the league office, head of officials, and when you're watching that type of game, and it seems to be the snowball effect, and it's one thing after another, and that play was indicative of that game. You have a change of possession play, so it's a change of direction, so it's tough. The officials are going one way, and now they have to go another way, trail the play, see what's happening. You see Lane get locked up, and they go to the ground. We didn't see a punch. You know, there was a forearm to the head as they were going to the ground. If you throw a punch and you land, that's an ejection. We never saw a shot of a punch, and it was unfortunate that the player was ejected from the game. And I would agree with you that was not a very forcible block in the back on Rodgers.
And really, the thing is, and I agree with you, one thing when you have a change of possession play, you always have to think about when you're going upfield, you're getting a play officiated by 7 people. When you get a change of possession play, now you're getting officiated by 3 at the most.
Exactly.
And so it puts you at a disadvantage, but you have to see the whole play. Devontae Adams started the whole thing when he pulled Lane down by the face mask.
Yeah,
and,
exactly.
You know, and so, you know, I know that it's tough, but you know, when it's tough and you're working from a deficit position, I think you want to make sure that it's big, whatever it is you
Absolutely.
call.
If you're going to eject a player, you want to make sure you're 100% what you see. That's the key, because now it's early in the game, and now this is a defensive starter that's going to go out, and it's going to impact the rest of the game. I think ultimately, and we have the benefit of going back and reviewing it on tape. Obviously, the officials on the field don't have that ability, but I think ultimately the right call would have been offsetting personal fouls on the two players and no block in the back, touchdown counts, and we're kicking off from the 35.
And the offsetting fouls would have been, they were dead ball fouls. They were called dead ball fouls, so it would have been after the score, and therefore that touchdown would have stood. Another big play. Another game changer.
Very big play.
We seem to have these plays every Sunday where you get one that's just like changes the potential outcome of the game. And in Washington, Philadelphia, we had one on a pass fumble play. Kirk Cousins was ruled to have fumbled, led to a pickup, a fumble, and a pickup of the fumble by Fletcher Cox, who returned it for a touchdown, and really took Washington completely out of the game at that point. We all thought that Kirk Cousins' hands had started forward with the ball and that it was an incomplete pass. Brad Allen, the referee on the field, ruled it as a fumble. Then New York basically stayed with the call of a fumble. You were New York last year, so it was you that would have had to make this decision, and we got a bunch of different angles. When you look at it, what do you think?
Yeah, I was in that position, so it really brought back memories. You're sitting there and you've got a big play in the game, and the key is the rule, right? The hand has to come forward with control. Once it comes forward with control, it's a forward pass. And in looking at it, to me, from the end zone shot behind the play, the hand was coming forward with control. And if it were me on the headset with Brad Allen, I would have said we got to go forward pass on this and giving the ball back to Washington. They're close plays. That's why they go to review, and there's going to be judgment involved. But that was one, to me, that was clear cut. I thought it was a forward pass.
Yeah, and you actually developed new words that are now in the rule book, I believe. We used to say indisputable visual evidence, and I remember Dean Blandino saying, "There's nothing that's
nothing
indisputable.
in this world is indisputable.
Yeah.
Nothing." And that's why that language, look, it's clear and obvious, right? It should jump out. It should be clear and obvious, not I think or maybe, and that's the standard. And I thought the standard was met in that situation.
And folks, remember now, this is the guy that was making the decisions last year in New York, and as far as I'm concerned, he had some streaks last year where he was 1 for 3 also. He was not always right.
Never 1 for 3.
Never 1 for 3?
Never 1 for 3.
Oh, my gosh. He really got tired of me last year, as a matter of fact. Hey, fines and personal fouls are a big issue. We had some things to look at.
The fines, it's something that takes place on a Monday. We would go through all of the personal fouls, all of the unsportsmanlike conduct fouls, and plays that were tagged that weren't called on the field that were potential violations that could lead to a player fine. And we looked at a couple of plays from the Steeler-Browns game that could lead to fines. The first was William Gay on Ricardo Lewis, and Lewis was in a defenseless posture. He's attempting to catch the pass, and it's important to remember there are several different types of players. Postures where a player is going to get defenseless player protection. A receiver attempting to catch a pass is one of them. You can't go to the head-neck area, and you can see leading with the shoulder. It's not just the helmet. Could be a shoulder, could be a forearm. Shoulder to the head while that receiver's trying to make a catch. That's going to be a foul for unnecessary roughness, hit on a defenseless player, and it was penalized during the game. So it'll be interesting to see if that does lead to a fine, because that is the type of hit that will lead to a fine for the most part.
And you had a second one in that game also.
We had a second one, Ryan Shazier hitting Deshaun Kaiser with his helmet, and it's important, again, sliding runner, not just the quarterback. Any runner can give himself up by sliding feet first. Not just protected from contact to the head neck, they're also protected with contact from the crown of the helmet with force. And you can see just on these images, you can see Shazier lowering the head and in essence spearing the quarterback, and that is a foul. It was called and will probably lead to a fine later in the week.
And you are going to address some issues with the fine later in the week to talk about some of the fines that are issued and the types of fines that they are.
Yeah, we're going to go into on Wednesday a little bit more detail on the fine process and some of these plays, because not every personal foul that's called on the field gets a fine, and not every fine was called on the field. And so it's interesting.
Perfect was an example.
Exactly. So we'll talk more about that on Wednesday. For all the illegal hits that we see, like the two that we just talked about, there's many more that are good, hard, clean hits. And these rules have been in place for several years now, and the players are really adjusting. We had a great example. We were both talking about it. Glover Quinn hitting David Johnson in the Cardinal-Lion game, leading with the shoulder, keeping the head to the side, going to the body of the receiver, exactly what he's being coached to do. And he really just demonstrated great technique there in terms of making a good, hard, legal tackle, not going to the head neck area. And
even legal results in an injury. You got what is reportedly might be a dislocated wrist, might be on the IR, going out for 8 to 12 weeks. But that's going to happen.
I think that's part of the game. And quite frankly, when you sit there with the competition committee, the potential head neck injury and what that could mean to a player later in his career and later in his life, that is going to take priority over a potential wrist injury or a knee injury. And that's why the rules are designed to keep the head out of the game and for the players to lower their target.
You know, it's interesting too, because people say to me all the time, but the receiver changed his body position. He was bracing for the contact, but in your day in the rule book, you added basically all liabilities on the defender, period.
All liability is on the player who is delivering the blow, whether that's a defender hitting a receiver, whether that's a player delivering a blindside block. It's a strict liability standard, and what that means is the onus is on the player making the contact to avoid the illegal area, the head neck or with the crown, regardless of any other mitigating factor, the receiver changing his level.
There was another play that I had never seen.
That was an interesting play, really interesting play. Dante Fowler, this was in the Jaguar-Texan game. Deshaun Watson, he has the football, and Fowler, it looked like he lifted his leg, his right leg, to knock the football loose and create a fumble that was recovered by the defense, Jacksonville, in that situation. Now let's talk about the rule, and if we can pop up the rule so everyone can see the language. And we discussed it, and is this illegally kicking a football? And when you look at the rule, no player may deliberately kick a loose ball or, and this is the important part in this play, a ball that is in player's possession. So if that's deemed to have been intentional, that's a foul, and that ball is going to go back to the Texans. It wasn't on the field. I think as we look at it, it certainly looked like it may have been intentional that he was being blocked and he lifted that right leg. But if it's intentional, it's a foul and can't do that.
Well, I think it's intentional. I mean, I don't think your leg raises naturally like that. But the thing is, I mean, you hardly ever see this.
You don't see that.
And all through my time and Jerry Seaman before me and Art McNally and certainly Dean and Carl Johnson and now Al Riveron, every week you put out videos to the officials and you put on these types of plays because
no question.
I don't think if you saw that, the official seeing that in real time was probably a little bit shocked at what he probably thought, well, tripping, but no, it wasn't low.
Exactly.
So it can't be tripping, and it probably never really resonated in his head what it really could be. But in reality, it was a 10-yard illegal kicking, which would have kept the ball with whoever, it's Houston or whatever.
With Houston,
with
yeah.
Houston.
With Houston.
And but really a rare play that they'll all see on their training tape.
Yeah, they'll see that. They'll see that this week. Absolutely.
You know, there's college games that we watch at Fox. We've got a great slate of college games, man. We've got rights to the Big Ten, the Big 12, the Pac-12. Yeah. So we see a lot of different things. And Cal and North Carolina last week had a play where 2 plays in a row, actually, where they intentionally, as it got near the end of the game, they intentionally held and tackled all the receivers. Even though they were ahead by more than 1 score, what they didn't want was a quick score and an onside kick.
Exactly.
So if they took time off the clock by deliberately fouling, then they could get them down to 1 last play, which they ended up scoring on the last play, but the game was over and Cal One, is it ethical? And does that really speak to the integrity of the game? I mean, Josh Wilcox, the coach, he put the play in. It was designed, the designed result, but it led to what was really pretty rare, a rule change in season that is not really player safety related.
Exactly.
But the change is,
and the change, and it's interesting because this is coached, and this is not something that's new to the game. We've seen this in the past. You see it on the safety with the team in a punt formation, and the idea is we're going to foul, but we're going to take time off the game clock, and we're going to prevent our opponent from getting the football back, or in the Cal UNC game, scoring and not being able to have the onside kick, have enough time for the onside kick. So now, if this happens, okay, it's unsportsmanlike conduct, they're going to reset the game clock. So there's no advantage gained. If there was 13 seconds on the clock at the start of the play, we're going back to 13 seconds and we're going to start on the snap. So now it really takes the incentive from the team that's having, to intentionally foul to take time off the game clock. And it's basically a replica of the NFL rule. We had 2 plays last year. New Orleans, San Francisco, similar to the play that we just talked about, where they just grabbed every receiver, and we're going to force you to kick a field goal. You're not going to score a touchdown at the end of a half. And then Baltimore, Cincinnati, the punt situation, where everybody on the entire punt team is going to hold. The punter's going to run around, and then when the clock hits 0, he's going to go out of the back of the end zone, and the game is basically over. So that rule was put in the NFL in the offseason, and now we have it for the college game the rest of the way.
Yeah, pretty unusual, but a really good rule change.
Yes.
I think that's a really good rule change.
Yes.
There was a really confusing play, Auburn and Clemson, and this has to do with a intentional grounding that was called against Auburn and was correctly called against Auburn. But the announcers talked about it not being a foul because the passer was outside the pocket and he got the ball back to the line of scrimmage. All of that is true. But the only way that a passer can do that in college, it has to be the person that takes the snap and then never relinquishes possession. So if he rolls out and then throws the ball from outside the pocket back beyond the line of scrimmage, that's fine. But if he hands the ball off to somebody else, they don't get that right. If they hand it off to somebody else, in this case, like a double reverse flea flicker, he does not get that right to throw the ball away beyond the line of scrimmage. So just interesting to know in teaching the rules that college game gives you the right to throw the ball away from outside the pocket only if you're the one that got the snap and controlled the snap and you never gave up that possession. A little different.
A little different in the NFL. So, and there are these differences between NCAA rules and NFL rules, and that's why it's important as officials go from the college game to the pro game, they really have to reprogram their brains and forget about some of the college differences and focus on the NFL. But in the NFL, okay, it's any player, any passer is going to get the protection. If they're outside the pocket and the ball gets to the line of scrimmage, there's no foul for intentional grounding. So that's a player who may have taken a pitch from the quarterback and now an option pass, something like that. Different from the college game, and it'll be interesting to see if that's something, because I like the NFL rule. I think that's the better rule, and it'll be interesting if the NCAA follows suit with the NFL rule.
Each week we'll try to give you a rule like this, which is different in college than it is the NFL. They're very interesting, some of the rule changes. Hey, any questions from social media? Do we have anything on that? We got three. Okay, let's see. Do you think the NFL should review ejections similar to the way that college football reviews targeting penalties? I give that to you, Mr. Blandino.
This is something that the NFL Competition Committee has discussed, because from a coach's perspective, losing a player is you've got a limited. College is different, where there's no limit on the number of players you can dress on game day. In the NFL, 46 players. That's it. And if you lose one of those players, it's so critical. And to lose one on a call that's a bang play that might not be correct, that's a tough thing. So committee has discussed that. They haven't gone that route. I would certainly be in favor of some form of it to get replay involved so we can get it right. I think had we had replay on the Lane ejection, Lane would have stayed in the game. And I
he
think
would have stayed at the game if we saw all the video.
Yes.
I mean, that's the danger. You know, maybe did something happen after the fact, you know, where there was a punch thrown.
Sure.
That we really don't know.
Sure.
But I'm in agreement with you. I mean, you talk about 100 players on the sideline in college, not to say that players 46 to 100 are going to necessarily play,
Exactly.
but they carry more on the squad. But I'm inclined to think when it comes to player ejections that there ought to be some review process, even though I don't want to take replay much beyond where it is right now.
But there is replay can get involved if, let's say, they would have ejected 23 instead of 20 in the game in Green Bay. Replay can come to the referee and say, no, it's number 20, not number 23. But they can't review the act that ejected the player.
Yeah. Another one. Mike Pereira just saw Eli Manning get a slap on the head on a sack. Legal? You know, well, we had the same situation that came up with Carson Wentz in his game. You know, the whole thing when this protection to the head started, any blow to the head whatsoever was a foul. And the one that always led to the discussion was when you reached to try to bat the ball down and your hand followed through and you made contact with the helmet. It was a foul. I mean, that was the way it was when all of these protections really got emphasized. But that's changed. It has to be forcible. So they ruled now that if a slap to the head, it's got to be forcible contact to the helmet. And I think what you want to do is you've got to take a look at the contact, and is it the type of contact that would cause an injury? I don't think what I saw with Eli was. I don't think what I saw with Carson Wentz was enough to call a foul.
No, it's a player safety rule, and as Mike said, the standard used to be if the helmet moved, it was a foul. And we saw fouls that were called 15-yard penalties that were just a brush or a graze. Again, the committee looked at that. They didn't think that those warranted 15-yard penalties because it wasn't a safety issue. Like you said, there was no potential for injury. So we added the language forcible. It has to be forcible contact. If I'm trying to block the pass and I just graze the passer's helmet, that's not a foul. But now if I wind up and I hit him to the head with a blow, fist, forearm, elbow, that's going to be a 15-yard penalty.
Yeah. Last question. Mike Pereira, does the NFL like the free play thing with the offsides? Why not call it dead? It's not good for football play.
That's a great question.
Why? Why should you penalize the offense for a mistake that the defense makes?
But that's a great question, and something that we've discussed. I agree. I don't think.
Well, do you know this Greg guy or something that you say it's such a great?
Greg,
what?
Greg,
Really?
Great question, Greg.
Really?
Great question. I agree that the offense should not be penalized. But there's a part of me that says when Green Bay's Aaron Rodgers is the best
No question.
at it. But there's a part of me that says it leads to some of the things that are tough to officiate. The slight head bob, the slight movement, some of the synchronized movement that's you're trying to draw the defense offside now. And that becomes difficult to officiate. Whereas if there was no incentive, if we're just going to blow the play dead, maybe they don't try as hard. I tend to lean, let it play out, get the free play. But it's something that's been discussed, and I think it'll continue to be a topic of discussion.
So then you go, okay, so the guy lines up offside, like we had a couple of those last night. You're going to shut that down?
No, I think if they jump, the potential. We know if they jump and they make contact, we're going to shut it down, right? Or if I jump and you're the offensive lineman and you react to me, we're going to shut that down.
Yes.
I think that in the neutral zone, let the defender try to get back. I'm okay with the free
So
play.
Green Bay doesn't substitute, and they catch Seattle with the 12th player not getting off the field. You're going to shut that down too?
No, that wasn't Greg's question. Greg, that wasn't your question.
I know that, but it's the same type of thing, for God's sake. Greg, one more silly question. Hey, Mike, how would you have ruled the Immaculate catch? I don't know about you, but I've looked at it a zillion times. I'd have ruled it and said, after reviewing the play, the ruling of the field stands because I never get a clear look of whether the ball touched the ground or not. And I also can't tell at that time whether it touched the two offensive players in a row. I can't tell. I mean, there's just no way for me to tell. So I would have stayed with the ruling on the field.
I would have. I mean, I was 6 at the time, but I would have.
That's great. Like I was like 40, but he was 6.
I definitely would have stood, the call would have stood, because there was just never an angle that showed who it touched, and I think that's a play. Let's let the Immaculate reception live on.
Live on forever.
Live on
Hey,
forever.
thanks to you folks on, wait a minute, is it Twitter, Periscope, Facebook?
YouTube.
We got them all. Hey, 1 o'clock every Monday, we're going to have a show like this to talk about some plays. And if you want to send something in on Twitter on a Sunday and recommend, ask for a play to be discussed, we'll look at that. We'll follow it that way too, either at Dean Blandino or at Mike Pereira, or what the heck is the at Fox something? Who is it? Whatever. At Fox Sports, go ahead and send the questions in. And at 1 o'clock, Pacific. 1 o'clock Pacific time.
You got to be on time.
Specifically
You
on
have
1
to be
o'clock.
on
We will
time.
cover this because I may be older and he might be better looking, but I am always on time.